Okay, first thing I actually want to do here is take care of that wall texture. Let's see. If you look at the building behind it, you will quickly notice that it's got a very aged and weathered looking sort of board wall. Probably in need of a little refurbishing, but that's great for what I'm looking for. So let's head back into Solid. Now we're using Eevee here, so I'm going to be ignoring cycles-like features such as, say, distortion and bump mapping. There are other ways to do that, actually. You can even do it with geometry nodes if you're clever, but that would be getting ahead of myself. We're going to add a new material, and we're going to call it, whoops, wall boards. Now, I know that just about everybody is generally anticipating using a texture for this, and you could do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. However, it's not how I like to do it. I like to have a bit more variation than that. You know, sometimes it doesn't matter. Well, there it is, geometry. But the first thing we're actually going to want to do to follow the look and feel of that pattern, you know, what we're actually seeing there, how we're determining that it is a pattern as people, is it's going to be relative to its height above the ground, or rather the base of the mesh. Now, as much as I would like to tell you that you can just go to, say, mesh height or something like that, that feature does not exist in here, but it doesn't need to, because we can do something else using drivers. So, for starters, what am I calling this thing? Ah, that's not right. House.00. What drivers do is they allow you to take a feature of a specific object in your scene and use some property within it, since Blender is ultimately, whether it admits it or not, a Python IDE too, and a damn good one. I just happen to know offhand what that particular property is called. You can find out with copy drivers sometimes, which is a menu option when you right click on any field. And single property, house dimension 2. That's interesting. This has worked before. What did I mess up? Edit driver. Edit driver. And in theory, yes, you could just go ahead and automatically punch this in every time you change the size of the house, but we're trying to save time, so I don't think that works for us at all. 0, 0. Copy path. Interesting. Give me just a sec here. Okay, figured out what it was. It's just a different coding style than mine. It's dimensions, not dimension. And now you'll notice that every time I change the height of the house, this changes to adjust to it. And you can override it a little for the sake of, just say, testing an idea you had, but not strictly necessary. Now, one thing I want to remind you is this is a 50-meter tall house right now. That is a long ways for 2 stories. Mostly I've been looking at projections and perspective on it, just ensuring that everything has the correct scale for its own environment, because that way I can just scale it all down in the end and nothing's going to be interfered with. So let's see, we've got that. Let's go ahead and plug it into our surface node just to test and see what we've got here. And it's bright. Oh, geez, no wonder. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and throw in a math node and a separate XYZ node. And we want this to be divided by that, and plug that into our surface node, which is a great way of testing things. XYZ is the position, that is geometry, so that's the actual vertex position. I have it set to add. Alright, that's what I'm looking for. Now, we're obviously not done yet on account of the fact that we're trying to go for more than one board for the whole house. I'm just gonna delete that principled BSDF. We want to have the geometry part down first. Okay, so next up we're going to need what's called a modulo, which is also commonly known as the remainder operator, though I will tell you as a mathematician that is not strictly true. But it's reasonably close. And that's what happens when we modulo it with 0.5. You'll notice that every time it reaches 0.5, it starts over. It is, well, in a sense you could think of all numbers as being modulo some infinite value. Something that under that context is too big to think. I mean, this is true of every number. I'm going to say even imaginary and complex, really. I don't know why it wouldn't be. But as we decrease the size of this, you'll note that we get something else. We have more of these. You can see where I'm going with the boards now. Let's try 0.01. Yeah, I do like that. But what's this? They're getting darker, right? Well, that's an easy thing to fix, too. And we want to divide it by that. Let's have a value come in here. 0.01. I'm going to drag it to both of these because, as a general rule, I do not like to have to work with two duplicate datums that ultimately represent the same value. We have a problem here. This thing is actually located below the ground, so let's move it up too. Hence that black was all in the negatives. I'm actually not entirely sure how Blender works with modulo, but that is a safe guess that negative results in a negative value. It's not technically accurate. It's actually a serious mathematical abuse, but you know, I'm willing to overlook it. Now, let's get back to our principled shader here. I'm going to plug this in over here and give myself a little space. I actually love noodle graphs when it comes to shader editing. Most of the time I feel like they just slow me down, but this I like. Let's give it a little bit lighter. I want the subsurface to be something you might actually expect to be beneath the surface on this thing, and I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the radius. Okay, that is definitely a step in the right direction, but it's moving the wrong way, so let me go ahead and correct for that. This will be 1 minus this guy. And that's definitely not something I wanted to happen. And you know what? Let's go ahead and add a division into. The thing is, with any other kind of programming, since I'm not new to the subject, these tend to slow me down a little. You know what? Let's add some bump mapping too. Input geometry. Let's try height here. You know what? Let's try the division height, because I'm not liking the look of that at all. This is taking us somewhere. As you can see, the whole house is boarded all the way to the top. We'll be adding more shaders later. But let's start by giving myself a little more room here because this isn't quite accurate. It looks brand new, which is not acceptable for us. So let's go grab a texture, noise, and I'm actually going to multiply this. What does it mean to multiply a vector here? I'm honestly not entirely sure, but seems to be similar to piecewise multiplication. Actually, let's jump back to seeing what our direct output is again. Here we go. 100. Let's try 1,000. Nope, too high. That might be a start. One thing to be wary of is it says 3D up here, and you can actually choose all the way up through 4D. If you go to 2D, as I understand it, it just looks at X and Y, which you can still work with rotation and the like, but once again, we are always under the assumption that we're in the middle of a crunch. I'm going to be multiplying these two. Now that's a second noise value that just has a smaller scale. Yeah, there we go. But you know, I think I want to add a power to it as well, because it's not quite strong enough. Where's power? Now you're probably thinking, what on earth am I trying to do with this? For starters, I want to dirty this up a little. Flaking paint and the like. Yeah, you can see how it got a bit weaker there. That's great. And second, I'm going to be adding another shader here. You'll notice the house is a little bit whitened in some of these bleached and almost blanched areas. So I kind of like that, so I want to do the same thing. And to do that, we're going to use what's called a mix shader. Combines two other shaders according to a provided parametric factor. 0.5 should give us right between the two, which is, yeah, just that kind of muddy gray. 0 should give me a full white. I guess that's what that is. And 1 would give me full this. Well, guess what we have? There we go. It would actually be really nice if I could have some kind of an S-curve here, but to be fair, that's not a trivial mathematical operation. And I can barely read this thing. Let's see. Let's try a basic, just a basic scaling first. heck am I getting black? You can see it kind of bleeding in there, that dirtied look. In fact, let's look at it truly rendered, see what we get. Yeah, that's nice. But I'm not getting that kind of bleed I'm looking for. Let's try clamping this, see if that helps. Clamping strictly confines it to the range of 0 to 1. Okay. Let's take a look at my direct output. Interesting. I can see I've got those in the wrong order. Drag that up here for the sake of clarity. And now shader. Ah, that's progress. You know what? I think I know what part of the problem is here. Let me connect my normal up here. Give it a moment to compile, as you can see at the bottom. Ah, there we go. Yeah, that's working pretty well. Still got a reasonable sun. Alright, let's dirty this up in a few simplistic ways. For starters, I want roughness to be all the way up. This is old wood. It is not going to look great. Specular can be down completely. Roughness, isotropic sheen, potential, clear cut, roughness, transmission. There we go. Normal is right. And now, just take it in. I have this set to only show one window again, just for the sake of clarity. So you can't see it, but I'm actually looking at the full render and just asking myself, would this work on me? And I've actually got a few other materials to add. I mean, the windows, as an example, are going to look completely different, but those should be fairly simple, not to mention the doors. And there's that glass dome above the door. But yeah, you know, I think this will do it for now, and I may come back to it later. So I'm just going to save that real quick, and we have our first material down. Hey guys, so seems I made an interesting mistake a little while ago I need to fix first. That's alright, this stuff does happen. So my windows here. I made the mistake of assuming that I could just make them part of the main mesh. Initially thinking that maybe I just apply some kind of tinted gloss over them, which is usually enough for a window if you don't want to worry about the whole interior. The problem is I kind of am worried about the interior. So, I mean, eventually I'm going to need to have it literally visible from the outside as one of these panes, probably the top one, not sure about that yet, ends up breaking. So, let's go ahead and separate the two. You begin by selecting them the best you can. There we go. That was Control plus and Control minus. That increases the radius of what you have selected. Let me go ahead and turn screencast keys back on. And of course, I'll want to deselect these pillars in wireframe. So that doesn't need to be selected. Always spend a decent moment scanning over this stuff, just to make sure you're not grabbing onto anything you don't mean to. So I'm going to manually clean this a little. Just because I want to get all those little crooks around the windows, but I don't actually want anything connected to the main house. I'm going to be separating the two in a moment. Now, normally I would use a tool called Knife Project for this, which is incredibly useful as it is. Most people remain unaware of. What it basically does is takes your camera angle with 2 objects minimum selected and cuts out seams into the active object, matching how they look. I might have a chance to use it yet, and I can demonstrate it, but we'll see what happens first. Odd. Alright, let's try it the second way. This is part of why it can be so useful to have things axis aligned. By using the numpad, you can zoom in on, you can immediately switch to just about any angle. And circle select is very good for when you're trying to avoid selecting everything and just want few items instead. There we go. Now I've got these specifically. In fact, while I have them, let's go ahead and add them to a vertex group, because I am in no way convinced that this is going to be the last time I need to do this. So we'll create a new one here. And I've already got them all selected. That's important. But with those vertices, faces, and edges selected, hit assign here. Object vertex group assign. That's just the Python for how you do this. And now I could hit deselect and it would deselect them, or select and it will select those same vertices. They all have indices in Blender, which is great because it allows it to associate them with different properties or even custom properties. Now I'm going to go X in a nice round 100 here. Now I'm kind of fortunate that I've already got these grooves in here, except for these two, so I may yet end up getting to demonstrate the wonders of Knife Project. But first, let me grab these guys and just delete faces. I want this building to be evidently hollow, really. If you've got any crooks on the side, plus minus is a great way to round out the selection area you've got. Let me delete those faces. Now I remind you, these aren't the windows anymore if you didn't catch. They're just engravings left on the building from, likely from our mesh joining. Oops. I wonder. Let me turn X symmetry on here. See if I can get the other one too. I'm never 100% sure if that's going to work. Nope, it did not work. Good try though. There's actually a very good chance I'm going to continue with simply using that tinted gloss for the windows here. Just make sure I've gotten all the edges. I did not. There we go. But eventually I'm going to need them to be transparent. And as to what's behind it, there's actually a very good chance that's simply going to be a compositor overlaid video. It's not exclusively likely, but it's likely enough. Okay, I just mangled that, so let's select it the idiot way. There we go. And delete faces. So the long-term plan here is to simply use a Solidify Modifier, which you may remember from the last video. Pretty sure I used it. What it does is it takes your mesh and adds a little bit of depth to it, so you can turn something that's two-dimensional into something three-dimensional. Oh, that was a bad idea. Let's go back to solid mode. Yeah, take a look at that. Of course, I don't really want to apply it to everything, do I? So, one of the wonderful tricks with it is you can select particular regions and apply them to vertex groups. I'm going to go ahead and call this one, shall we say, structure. Technically, it's all part of a house, so. And now I can switch the vertex group to structure, and it will only apply to structure. Let's see that again. Let me get rid of it. And you'll notice this buffering on here. In fact, if I turn it way up, you can see it even more. And obviously that is a geometric atrocity, so we don't want that. But if I switch to structure, that's not part of that vertex group, so it doesn't apply to it. And we still have this massive bulking up over here. I'm going to tone that down a little. Alright, so we've made some progress here. I'm going to go ahead and save it real quick. Now, what about our two windows here? Be honest with you, I attempted once before to... wait a minute, where the heck did my windows even go? Come on, guys. Okay. Select. Oh boy. I didn't delete him somehow, did I? Well, that's alright. Let's just start over. Save frequently, of course. No, do not save that. Alright, let me turn on stats just to verify that I actually did delete it. It's alright, guys. This happens to everybody now and then, as I have painfully learned. Selected. Yeah, they're really gone. Okay, well, that's alright, because we can append too. I'm just going to grab them from an earlier version, say Haunted House 1, object, window, glass.1. I think that was... Nope, that was the whole freaking house, but you know what? I can use that too. Let me check first, though. You see, I would like to shamelessly pretend that this does not happen on a regular basis, but I'd be lying through my teeth. Yeah, there we go. That's right, because I moved the whole house up 2 steps. Alright, well that'll work. So, frames. You know what? I'm going to join these two together. Let me just make sure that window.frame is the one that's been selected. And I can join those two together and just grab these in edit mode, of course, and up by 2. Let's go to wireframe. Grab all of them. There we go. And I do want that to be a child of window.frame and probably just called window.glass. I don't expect to add any more of them here. Alright, so let's take a look at it rendered real quick. You probably can't see it actually because I don't have OBS set up like that, but it's looking pretty good. Actually, let me go ahead and add a window real quick for that. I'm going to see if I can make a live change here. Window capture. Yeah, create new, and I'm going to go with Blender render. Ah, there we go. Yeah, so as you can see, we've got our basic sort of grody looking old wood effect here, which I remind you was entirely procedurally generated, and our windows are now a separate mesh. The funny thing is, I'm not entirely sure why they're just looking white right now. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It must be because they're imported and I hadn't applied it yet, but we'll be giving them their own material in a moment. Let's see. Well, I can swap red and blue. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Alright, and let me just go ahead and delete that desktop capture. Yes, I'm fine with getting delete desktop capture. Add a new one, and we want that to be Blender. There we go. Now of course you're going to want to still be able to see me, so let me just put that up above there. There we go. Alright, so heading back, now we're going to move on to our window material right after I save. And I will be back in just a moment. Hey guys, I'm back. Now let's go ahead and do this shading. Now, as you've seen, all of this is, in the end, just numbers. It's just a different way of representing it in many ways. Some people talk about how they don't see the math. Well, stop seeing the math and start seeing the picture. The elements of how it interacts are all the same. If that's how you need to see it, it's how I do, then by all means do it. What we're going to be doing here is something that's going to be convincingly similar to glass. In fact, for the final render of my trailer, I am likely going to be using a few different materials here. So we're going to want to start with the simplest one. Let's go with a dark blue there and an even darker one for the subsurface. Raise that up a little bit. You know what? Let's turn to material preview just to be sure. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on transmission here too. I don't want it to be all the way up, I don't think. And I'll be dropping the alpha a little. And let's go ahead and look at it rendered just to be sure that I actually am seeing through it. Yep, I may need to make a few adjustments to Eevee to get this to work. Screen space reflections are important. I never turn bloom on until I'm ready for the final. Subsurface scattering, that's actually fine the way it is, but let's go ahead and turn on refraction too. This machine can handle it. Simplify, freestyle, color management. I've already got it set to, no, I actually didn't have it set to transparent. Well, that's important. Indirect lighting, we'll leave that alone for now. Volumetrics, I don't need volumetric shadows. I know I'm going to be screwing with this quite a bit when I'm done anyway, just to give it the kind of look and feel that I'm after. So some things are going to be substantially dampened, you might say, in the final model anyway, so we need not worry about them yet. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and add in a sphere here, just so I can see what I'm doing. There's nothing actually behind the window at the moment, which is part of why it's so difficult to determine whether it's transparent. And there is another shader that we could use for this called glass. But, you know, I have to admit, I'm actually really fond of these principled shaders. They borrow physical properties to describe how the material behaves, which is very important to me. Let's turn transmission all the way up for glass, and alpha all the way down. And let's see, I'm betting I'm missing a material setting. Blend mode should be alpha blend. Whoop, that did something. Here we go. Now that's very interesting indeed, isn't it? Let's go ahead and give this an emissive material just to be sure. And I'm just going to go with straight emission here and turn it way the heck up to maybe 1000. As you can see, it is transparent at this point. I just want to make sure we'll be able to see something in it. Let's go with screen space, refraction. Whoops, not that one, the window. Show back face. Yes, show back face. Volumetrics. None. Alright, well, this is going to be good enough for now because I'm likely going to be using an entirely different renderer later anyway. And in fact, just for this test, let's go ahead and turn bloom back on. Here it is. Might be a little bit too bright. Yeah, what I'm guessing is happening here is Eevee is culling the bloom. So let's try it in cycles, which is a nice masculine ray tracing engine, I guess. Oh my god, it takes a while even now, but yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give you the window capture from that too. Let's see, window capture. Let's say render. I'm just going to see if this works. And we are going to go not with my desktop, but with Blender Render. Alright, there. Now you can see it. And just to check, yeah, there we go. Going back and forth. You can see the transmission of my random glowy sphere, the debug sphere, right behind it. So once again, I'm attempting to aim for Eevee here, so let's go back to that. And I feel like I can go ahead and delete that sphere at this point. We have our basic window material. And while we're at it, actually, let's select this and grab that. In fact, while we're at it, let's go to wireframe just to make sure there's nothing behind it. It doesn't look like there is. I'm going to go ahead and add a new material and select glass and assign. Yeah, that looks really bad. Okay. inner seam here. There we are. What I'm wondering is what it is that's colliding with it exactly. Let's go ahead and see if I have the wrong item in that. I do. Check that out. I do not want this door. It's my experience that the vast majority of the time when people end up stubbing their toes using Blender, it's because they did something they forgot about or something that they didn't understand, which is fine, really. I mean, it's how we learn. It's definitely how I learned. Okay, well, the advantage here is I actually have a lot of material here that is not nearly as complex as the door itself. So I can just select everything and then remove that stuff a little at a time. There might be an easier way to do this, but until I know what it is, it's only theoretical. Alright, and now I'm going to select structure here and hit remove, and yeah, there we go. Let's go back to rendered real quick, and I am going to hit 3 to go into this mode. Jump over here, assign glass, and shift rendered. Almost, man. I see what it is. It's this extra gap back here, which I'm not even entirely convinced I'm going to be keeping. But for the moment, let's grab it and also remove it from our structure. And try rendering now, and nope, still there. Alright, selecting all, select, wireframe. What could possibly be doing that? Do I have an additional item here I need to worry about? Probably. Just start by deselecting everything that's truly irrelevant to our concern. Circle select is very handy for this stuff. It's great if you can find a way to just grab something linked to it and Control plus or Control L to grab the whole thing, but it doesn't always work out like that, and sometimes it isn't obvious, which honestly is just as bad as it not existing. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to add this right here, and I'm going to grab this, Control L to select it, and hide all of that. It's not actually gone. And then switch into face mode, and actually, you know what? I need to get rid of these too. Control L, H to hide, and I can get rid of these guys. Control L, H to hide, and that might be a little concerning, but okay. Now that I've got this seam here, I can simply select all of this. Whoop, hang on, missed a pillar. So sorry. Control L, H to hide. Alright then, let's grab this. And the reason that's not selecting is because it's now technically a different object. Plus 1. Alright. And I will be removing that from structure. Now Alt-H brings everything back. Let me go back into rendered mode. And there's that wedge again. Go back into wireframe. Select structure again. There we go. All right, and just to check, I'm going to go ahead and reveal this again. Yes, there it is. Okay, so there's my render. I can see that there's a serious problem with this window right here, but that's all right. That's fixable. And interestingly enough, well, that's a funny problem. Okay, I know what happened there. This is one of the many problems with non-quad surfaces. There we have it. Is our material right? Is... Alright, there wasn't a problem with that after all. There was a problem with something completely unrelated. Yeah, there we go. It's just missing that portion of the wall. I think that might end up being the window I go with for this final scene at the end that I have in mind. The whole thing shouldn't last much longer than 45 seconds, but I'm actually suspecting it might actually be the one right above it. Okay, let me go ahead and grab my windows and join them to this house. Whoops, not join, parent. Thank God for edit undo, right? Alright, now these are going to be kind of a withered wood, which I'm going to start with, not as principled, but just as a dirty, diffuse white. And while I'm over here, wood. Whoops. I'm trying to rename that dirty white wood, not the object. Sticky shift finger, apparently. Here we go. And let's see, what kind of texture can I use here? I'm actually familiar with a lot of other procedural textures, which unfortunately have not yet been implemented in Blender. And I'll be honest with you, the majority of my understanding, and most of what you need to know, is purely the Python, not the C++. But one of these days, I think it would be really cool if somebody implemented Jeggle in here, specifically for that purpose. You can do just about anything with that. It's the FFmpeg of... Well, that's not right. I don't want rainbow windows. Of still images. Let's see, let's go from scale 5 to 50. If it does not seem obvious why it is that increasing the scale shrinks the image, think of it as a sampling scale. The higher you up you are, the smaller the cars look, right? Similar system here. Oh, that's not quite right. Let's try 300. There we go. And you know, while I'm at it, let's go ahead and do converter separate X, Y, Z. Well, that didn't make a lot of sense. Why is just X doing that? Shouldn't it be... I know. Okay. I'm going to multiply this by, say, let's go with 3. And then we're going to combine X, Y, Z. You know what? I did this on the wrong one. Let me grab something here, like, I want local, so perhaps object data. Nope, that's not it. Geometry. Okay, fine. Geometry it is. For now. Actually, I am kind of liking that look. Now, normally I might say modify the normal here too, but I don't expect it to come out at all in the final image. I might also add a bevel modifier for the edges here, or alter my UVs so I don't have that kind of weird behavior. Actually, that's very similar to what we would get in reality, so no, I probably wouldn't do that anyway. But yeah, you know, while we've got that, let's go ahead and add it to our doors as well. Is there any chance they'll look different? Absolutely. But for the time being, that looks great. Ooh, I'm going to want to figure out something for that sort of hooded balcony too, aren't I? What would you call that? I can't quite tell what it is there. It might even just be plain wood, which, I mean, I could totally do, but I don't know if it would have the feel I'm looking for. I'd like something darker for the final composition. Even in the architecture, you can see how they kind of follow the rule of thirds here. Yeah, I don't want it to just blur out. So, yeah, I'll probably do something creative there. But you know, while we're over here, let's grab this. Control L to grab that whole knob since it's not technically attached to the door. And we're going to add a new material, and we're going to call this Dirty Bronze. I'm going to go with dark orange, maybe turn metallic all the way up. And don't forget to assign it. And let's see. Let's use a mix shader again. Go with something kind of dark and not really all that glossy. I'll drop this over here and turn it way the heck down. And we'll have our mix shader, that and that. Just so, because I know I'm going to forget, let's go ahead and connect this. Alright, and then add input, texture, noise. Factor can go right there, and how's this going to look? Okay, now let's just start scaling this up. Alright, let's go ahead and add a power to it. The reason I like powers in the math nodes is because they emphasize the extremes, or dampen them if you've got one that's less than 1. go. I'm just going to home in on that. Yeah, there we are. And you know, we'll want to assign the exact same material on the left-hand door here. This is another case where I feel like a beveling or a bevel modifier might be a great idea. Always go with a modifier if you can. They're much easier to get rid of. And on modern machines, they're not really such a big deal to work with. Or even quasi-modern machines. And there we go. Let's take a look at this. Hang on. We've got that lamp there, and that cylinder barely looks like it. But you know what? It needs its own texture work too, because while I will grant you people are unlikely to notice it to begin with, you want them to enjoy it when they do. Ah, I see. Because I'm at individual origins, one median point. Yeah, there we go. Yep. All right. I'm going to use something here called checker deselect. Checker deselect is interesting when you've got something already formed, but you want to apply some kind of regularity to it. What it does is it skips so many and then highlights one. So let me switch to wireframe so I can see what I've got. Okay. 3, checker deselect, 5, and offset should be. Okay, that's weird. I'm thinking that would be every 8. 8, 16, 24, 32, but you know, I'm honestly not entirely sure that I got all 32 on that. I may have had it set to something else already. Well, that's alright. There we go. We're going to add a new material to that. Thankfully, I already have an emissive material. So I may as well use it on something I intend to keep. And don't forget to assign it. There we go, with that one break right in the middle. And after I get all Picasso with this stuff, I doubt anybody's going to see the finer details. Unless I actually want them to see those. Alright, so we've got our render here. Next up is going to be the roof. Alright, back to it. So, the roof itself. This is a black and white photo, which, while often aesthetically pleasing, specifically because of the attention to intensity that black and white generally provides, deals with how our eyes work in many ways. It can leave us wanting for information at times. Like, I really have no idea what color that roof is. But, you know, I'm not trying to mimic it perfectly, so it's time for a creative decision, and, you know, I think it would be good to do a deep red here. So we'll start very simple, as we usually do. I'm going to choose kind of a maroon or mahogany, or just deep brown there. I don't want any subsurface beneath it. It's tile, but I will want the roughness to be very high. And we will hit assign, Z rendered, and just noticing now this one problem I have up at the top, which I think is actually going to be visible. And I know nobody's going to care but me, but damn if I'm not going to care about it. And hey, there's another problem I didn't notice. I've got internal faces. Those are especially a nightmare for materials because they end up causing bizarre seams in your smoothness. Now's a good time to save. Alright, let's take a look at that real quick. I honestly have no idea except for the very basics of what I'm looking at here, and obviously I skipped out on that little belfry window, but I think that's going to be alright. I do have a sense of it though, so let's go back into texture and see if we can get away with using a texture before we actually create something. Let's see, point sky texture. Maybe Voronoi will do it. Let's go with that. What Voronoi basically is almost a particle system in a sense. Every single cell gets its color based on the closest particle to it, which is actually a lot more complicated to do than it sounds. You just got a handful of them. Well, that's easy. Just test all of them and see which one's lowest and work from there. However, if you happen to have a vast quantity of them, like say in the hundreds of thousands, and we often do, then it can be much more of a problem because what I just described was what's called an ON squared algorithm. In other words, the number of cycles is going to be proportional to the number of samples times the number of samples. So that's okay for small things, but it gets out of hand fast when you get bigger. Fortune, a brilliant computer scientist, as far as I'm concerned at least, came up with an algorithm to get it done in n log n time, which I know doesn't sound significant, but it actually makes a lot of things possible on modern household machines which would not be otherwise, which is what Blender uses. And there are many different ways to do that, ways to render. You know, let's start by doing just a normal offset here using this. Actually, you know what? Let's start by just showing me what I've got. Alright, yeah, that's not really the kind that I want specifically, unless maybe I apply a little bit of math to it. Let's try power, which is the closest thing I'm going to get to an S-curve here. Yeah, and then we want to do a 1 minus, because I want those bumps to be physical bumps. Alright, and let's just increase our scale here until it's small enough. Alright then. Now we're going to go into vector and bump. Let's see if it already knows. It does not. Whoa! Normal colors. Alright, let's just go ahead and swing this right down here. And switch back to this. And what have we got? Alright, that is much nicer. Let's try rendered. I think I want to make this top surface to the porch a bit darker. Don't forget to save regularly with this stuff, of course. And of course I'm going to want to deal with this as well, as obviously I missed some of my house here, but that should be easy enough. Maybe not perfectly easy, but easy enough. Let's drop that sign just so we can see it. And actually I'm going to make it a bit brighter and a bit redder. Yeah, there we go. Come back to scaling it in a moment. You will notice though that when I scale it, because of how I did this, the boards across the side of the house are scaling with me here. If I was doing the full model, which someday I might come back to, I'd want to have windows on the side of the house too, but for the moment the front is really the only thing that matters. Should be working out here. Alright, I feel like I'm missing something, so let's look at this again and enumerate what we're looking at. We've got shutters on the windows. That seems important to me. So we'll come back to those in a moment. The pillars are a little simplistic given this sort of a tapering, this butterfly thing at the top, but I'm not sure that's going to be significant in the final product. We skipped a few windows on the actual roof, but again, I'm not so sure that's going to matter here. And time is money. In fact, I'd say time is more than money. People spend money so they can save time. So I'm going to make a note of that, and I will come back to it. This could use some significant detailing. In fact, let's start with that. This item input all right, combine. You might think it's a little strange that they never added just an input of a vector value. I know why they did it though, simply because XYZ combine already does that in many ways. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this. Is it possible to copy the path here? Oh, I'll bet you actually don't let me do that. Well, graphics acceleration does have its cost, doesn't it? Alright, well that's alright. I have an idea here. 0, Y's. That's not going to be consistent though. So I'll tell you what. Cursor is selected, and we're just going to add an empty here. Make it a sphere. I'm going to make the title this. What is that called anyway? I'm going to call it a dome for the moment. And we will of course want to, oops, parent it to the house so that when the house shrinks, it shrinks as well. Okay. Now I can copy the full data path here, which is what I want. Add driver, and we want this to be a single property of, this is still a house. Nope, actually I want it to be the dome center. Excuse me, I already forgot what I was doing there. Yep. Just making sure it actually changed the way I wanted it to. And we want to add a driver here. We'll make this once again dome center. This time I want it to be location 1. That can't be right. Center location 0. Driver dump center. Actually, you know what? I don't even need to do that. Alright. For the sake of simplicity. And speaking of simplicity, add input variable transform channel dome center X. Edit driver. Transform channel. Y location of dome center. Whoops. Dome center. There we go. And edit. No, add a driver. We want this to be a transform channel. Dome center. Z location. Always make sure that you know if you're working in object space relative to the origin of the object, or world space relative to the origin of the world. That makes a huge difference here. Alright, so now we have that, which is a specific point on it, and as I discussed, due to the way that everything's parented, it scales with it, rotates with it, so we don't need to worry about that. And we are going to add input from geometry. Position is the actual position being rendered, as opposed to the position of the object itself, which would be from input object. And we will want to add vector. Let's just, nope, that's not what I'm looking for. Vector math. We will want to subtract this from our customized origin point. I'm going to do do they have length in here or magnitude? I feel like they do. Yeah. Alright, this is the beginning of what we're going to be looking for. Let's switch back to rendered mode. Let it compile that. Yeah, there we have it. Now, if you look at the original reference photo of this old, purportedly haunted house, it looks haunted. I mean, if these things happen, that place is totally haunted by something. You'll notice we have these spires coming out of it. At the moment, I believe I'm doing the wrong kind of math, unfortunately. Let's see, I've got that. But you know, I actually want the angle of this from, say, a basic right one vector. So let's add another vector math. This would be what is known as arctangent 2. The catch is we may not need the whole arctangent 2. I think arctangent alone will do it. And in fact, that's not even a vector math operation. Now that I'm thinking about it, it just takes vectors. We want A10. Oh, great! Arctangent 2. There we go. We'll want to separate X, Y, Z. And you know what? I didn't need this after all, so let's get rid of it. The thing about arctangent 2 is for historical reasons, Y goes in the first value and X in the second, not the other way around. That'll do it. Well, that's curious. Let's try cosine on this. What's the point of clamping cosine? When could it possibly be? Oh, 0 to 1. Yeah, that could still be dangerous, though. Let me switch back into material preview mode. That's kind of funny. What I'm expecting is the greater the angle of the point is, with this as the origin, the lighter it should be. You know what, let's try this. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm going to do one more thing here where I will multiply by, say, 8. Let's go to 16. There we go. Actually, let's go into subsurface here. Nope, you know what? I'm actually going to have to mix this one. Okay. So we'll go into shader, mix shader, blah, 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 blah. And we're going to add, let's go specular here. Specular, give a nice dark red color. And this is going to be what separates it. Alright, now that's obviously progress. It's not quite there yet. You can see how we kind of have that spire thing going. But it fades a little too readily. I would like it to be all at once. So let me just move this down here. We're going to add one more math node right after I save. I am very paranoid about saving. Drop this over here. And we're going to want less than, and drop that over here. This ought to make a huge difference. Yeah, there we go. I am kind of feeling like this should be a bit brighter, though. So let's just crank that up a little. Maybe not that bright. Okay, next up, let's add some shutters. Now, a lot of these windows have symmetry to them, and I can prove that right now, as a matter of fact. Oh, I see. So, if I grab that and I want to select every single one of them that happens to be uniquely the same shape, I'm going to do select similar. And I could do perimeter, area. Let's go with area. And as you can see, it grabbed every other window here that is uniquely identical. I'm just noticing now that I have duplicate mesh over here because this is getting mirrored right across its center. It's probably not immediately a big problem or something I want to mess with right now, but I'll probably fix it before we finish, before we quit. I mean, one thing One thing Da Vinci said is that art's never really finished. It gets abandoned. We become content with it, and then we stop. It's not like we can't continue to improve it, trying to get to that distant ideal of the perfect model or perfect painting, perfect picture, perfect song. That's actually been one of my great struggles as an artist, to learn when enough is enough. After all, we're trying to publish this eventually. But back to my point, since we have symmetries here, we probably only need to really render this once. And I believe I know how to do it. Let me do cursor to selected here and then tab out of it. And we're going to add a mesh that is a circle. X90. Actually, let's go back to this real quick and drop it down here. Cursor to selected. Shift S, selection to cursor, keep offset. And scale that up. Scale it along Z. Scale a little further and scale a little further along Z. And let's see here. Now I'm going to hit O and turn on proportional editing here, so it grabs everything next to it too. And we really want to hug these edges. Now there we go. Also, I will be deleting those, grabbing these two, and extruding them downward, and filling the middle. And you know what? What happened there? I probably thought I hit SX and just hit X instead. Live and learn. Subdivide. And you know what? I don't need proportional editing for that. There we go. Control L and F. And, oops. This can be subdivided. Now, an interesting note. When you're trying to cut something in two like this, you can't just hit F. It'll add an edge, but it may have no effect on the plane behind it, which could be a serious problem later on. Hit J instead, just like join, and it will actually split it down the middle. Alright, and then I can hit V to separate this. Yep. Control L, P, part by selection. And we will want to do the exact same thing for this that we did for our door. Object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. There we are. And I want to do the same thing on the other side. Cursor to selected, object, set origin. Oh, right, that's why. Okay, origin to 3D cursor, rotate Z. Actually, let's go right between these two and add another empty, which we are going to call shutters. And I want both of these to be parented to shutters. P, parent to object. That way, when I'm duplicating these, I can just drag shutters around and I can orient them however I want. Also, we'll clearly want to be doing a solidify on this. And I'll remind you, we haven't scaled it down yet, so I'm going to go with 0.5 meters on here. It won't be like that in the end, but I need it to be proportional if we can scale it all down at once. Solidify 0.5. Select hierarchy, and I believe it's Alt D to form an actual linked copy. Yep. Now these windows down at the bottom are going to be a little bit of an issue, as they are not the same scale. Do they even have shutters here? Oh! They don't! Hey, that's great! Okay. So now let me grab each of these. Shutters, 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 shutters. I didn't have any AU down there, did I? No. And then this guy. And we will parent them to the house as well. Now the great thing about linked objects is you can change things about them and it will change all across. But if you do something like change the rotation, you can do that independently. Now this is great because it's actually substantially less data to send over to your graphics hardware. Whether it's your CPU or your GPU, it's still a concern. With a linked copy, it's linked because you only need one of them. Everything else is just a question of attribute data, like how rotated is it? Is it scaled at all? You can change those. You just can no longer change the individual vertices without affecting every single thing in the scene. So now let's just go ahead and give these some character. I'm probably going to be animating it a bit. My vision has this happening on kind of a windy day. I want that top one to be wide open. Actually, maybe not wide open immediately. Maybe I want it to burst open when he dives through the window. Now there we go. And each of these is actually going to be... Well, let's think about that for a moment. What do they look like here? They look like a darker and thinner version of my white boards here. So why don't we go ahead and do that? I'm going to start with wall boards. I'm going to build a new material, copying that material and pasting it. Window shutters. And in here we only need to make a few changes. As an example, this should be a lot smaller. Let's drop it down to 0.002. Oh, and of course I will want to remove wall boards here. Did I just rename the wrong thing again? Yep, but ironically it's actually better than what I already had, so. Okay, so let's take a look at that. 0.002 is too small. That's better. And we can head over to this and make it substantially darker. Okay, I really love that very fine, coarse grain it's given my window shutters. That's nice. There we go. That can be a lot darker too. This guy can have the same one. Window shutters. And let's take a look at that. Alright. Nice, as you can see. Hang on, that's my wife at the door. Hey, Sparrow. Let's just do a little video here. Do you like my purportedly haunted house?
Hang on a second.
Sparrow, there could be thousands of people out there.
Hmm?
There could be thousands of people. They're waiting on you. She's just going to have to take my word that it's good. Oh, well, here she is.
Cool.
All right.
I like it.
Yeah, I've just been working on it all day and figured I'd document the process as I go. This is all procedurally generated. That's almost the same thing. I literally just duplicated it. There's a few things that bug me a little bit, but I keep asking myself if they're actually going to matter. And a few other things I feel like I shouldn't be seeing but am, like this right here. I don't know why it's looking bronzy like that, but it's probably something stupid.
Also, this thing is like 100 meters tall, which is a bit of a problem, but I can fix that later. Okay. Oh, additionally, I can have these rotate independently, but they're all actually the same object, so that's great.
Nice.
And yeah, and I guess the stairs look okay. All right. You know, guys, I'm going to wrap it up for the night. And when I get back, we will look into animation, compositing, and all the other nonsense I do with this stuff. Y'all have a great evening.